Hi there, and thanks for joining this week's edition of Northwest Newsweek. I'm Danielle Bain. The twinning of the Trans-Canada Highway between the Manitoba border and the city of Kenora got a little bit closer to reality this week. Ontario Labour, Training and Skills Development Minister Monty McNaughton was in Kenora, joined by Minister Greg Rickford and reps from a First Nations cooperative to announce millions of dollars to train Indigenous people to work on the massive highway project. Adam Riley reports.
We want to ensure that the workforce with the greatest potential, that's ready, willing, and able, have the tools and the training that they require to be a significant part of that.
When work begins on the twinning of Highway 17 from the Manitoba border into Ontario, it will be residents of several First Nations in and along the route leading the charge on the ground, following this announcement from Minister of Labour, Training and Skills Development, Monty McNaughton.
We are investing $3.7 million for the Niwin-Wendinimuk partnership to train 110 workers from Indigenous communities for rewarding careers in construction.
In his remarks, McNaughton says in Ontario there are 20,000 high-paying construction jobs that are unfilled, some of which in the Kenora area. And this is where First Nations, which have been economically disenfranchised in the past, will play a key role going forward.
This training initiative is yet another example of the Anishinaabe and Treaty 3 leading the way to overcome past problems to mutual benefits. The creation of a skilled resident labor force will not only keep wage benefits in our region, but it will also dramatically reduce project costs.
We are confident that Anishinaabe-led training and skills development will also provide a way forward for our people so that they no longer feel blocked and are able to make their contribution to our regional well-being.
Having a First Nations partnership like Niwin-Wendinimuk training workers from their communities along the project route is not a new strategy. When the East-West Tie was still in development, the 6 First Nations between Thunder Bay and Wawa formed Supercom, which trained workers in the lead-up for construction. And while that project faced many delays, Kenora Rainy River MPP Greg Rickford was adamant Tuesday, stating there won't be delays on this one. He also noted the training produced through this funding package will go beyond the scope of the twinning project.
We're not just preparing for a single project. We're preparing for a position where local labor force can be mobilized on any number of projects that we intend to move forward with here in northwestern Ontario, across Treaty 3 lands and into the Anishinaabe-Aski territory.
The training is expected to begin in March of next year and run until July of 2023. And while no timeline for construction has been released, an announcement for the next steps of the project is expected within the coming weeks. Adam Riley, TBT News.
The first big snowstorm of the season caused havoc in the western part of the region on Thursday. Several thousand people were left without power and several highways were closed for more than 24 hours. The main closure was along Highway 17 from Chappaqua all the way to the Manitoba border. It started around 9:30 Thursday morning after numerous incidents along the route, including a collision at Tower Hill east of Ignace. The province later closed Highway 11 to Fort Frances and Highway 71 from Fort Frances to Kenora. Ontario 511 also reported many disabled vehicles along the highways, which were impeding traffic. The 511 website includes camera views which show the snow and ice-covered sections. All the major highways were reopened by Friday afternoon. The dispute in Manitouwadge between the volunteer firefighters and township officials continues to see positive progress. The 21 fire service members all took an unscheduled leave of absence on Monday, citing a lack of communication over the plan to hire a new fire chief. The firefighters agreed to return to duty on Tuesday afternoon after a private meeting was confirmed with the Township Council. Mayor John McEachern says he was pleased with the respectful discussion Wednesday night and says the firefighters have an integral role in the community. Another meeting is planned for next week where the mayor and council will provide their response to the firefighters' concerns. The volunteer members will remain on duty until that meeting is held. Council in Fort Frances has voted to investigate a leak of privileged information to the media, however, not in a way that the councillor who brought forward the motion had hoped. The motion was brought forward following a front-page story of the local paper that ran in late October and featured information that was confidential and not authorized for release to the public. Councillor Douglas Judson, following input from municipal staff, introduced the motion that would see the Municipal Integrity Commissioner conduct an investigation to determine who may have released the information. However, some members of the council disagreed with using the Integrity Commissioner for that purpose.
I fully agree with the importance of protecting the town's privileged and confidential information as outlined in both the Code of Conduct and our procedural bylaw. I don't believe I saw or noted anywhere in which the Integrity Commissioner was obligated to conduct a so-called technological investigation on behalf of a municipality into possibly identifying the source of a particular leak in order that a Code of Conduct inquiry could be formally launched.
I feel that if we involve the Integrity Commissioner again, it could be a distraction to council and an expense to council. I certainly would have no problem whatsoever with some sort of internal technological investigation.
Council later adopted an amended version of Judson's motion, to which Judson voted against, where the Integrity Commissioner would provide advice on the matter and not an investigation. The U.S. land border is now open to fully vaccinated Canadians, but traffic at Fort Frances and Pigeon River was only slightly busier, as Ottawa still requires a negative PCR test before people can re-enter this country. Those tests usually cost around $200, and some travelers may try faking symptoms at hospital testing sites in order to get them for free. Ryan Bonazzo reports.
Local travelers are once again allowed to flow through the U.S. border crossing at Pigeon River, but they can't return to Canada without a negative PCR test taken within 72 hours. Those tests are available for free at the regional hospital, but people who just want to travel don't qualify. The testing center only administers tests to those with COVID symptoms. Manager Jackie Park doesn't think people will try to game the system, but acknowledges there's no real way to know if someone is faking.
We just hope that individuals in our community are good people and that they know that having a test then maybe stops someone who actually is COVID positive from getting a test that day.
Someone like a child. Park says the vast majority of testing is on kids who are too young to get the vaccine.
Currently, I would say 75% is children.
And children, in many cases, need a negative test to return to the classroom.
We want to keep our kids in school this year. The last couple of years have been really hard on the kids, and they can't go to school if they have any symptoms at all. So lots of the testing that we're doing is actually clearing children so they can go back to school and to be checking that there isn't COVID. And we have had several outbreaks in the high schools, and there is currently one in a public school that we're doing testing for.
So while those determined to break the rules may be able to get away with it, it isn't a victimless crime. Ryan Bonazzo, TBT News.
Some sad news to report alongside the newest COVID-19 case numbers in the Thunder Bay District, as one new death was announced this week. The health unit offered its condolences on social media, and Dr. Janet DeMille is also reacting to Health Canada's approval of the Pfizer vaccine for booster shots on all adults. Corey Nordstrom has more.
For the first time since June, the Thunder Bay District Health Unit announced a new death in its daily case announcement of COVID-19. It's the 65th death from the virus since the pandemic began. There are 22 active cases in the district as of Friday, with 3 new cases confirmed, all due to close contact. Little can be said about the individual who died, such as their vaccination status. But medical officer Dr. Janet DeMille says it's an example of the severity of this virus and notes people should take solace knowing there is a vaccine readily available.
In general, what we're seeing is that serious illness and serious outcomes are more common in unvaccinated people.
In efforts to protect more people from COVID-19, Health Canada has approved the Pfizer vaccine for booster shots on all Canadians over 18.
This is really, I think, adds sort of another layer of protection.
It's anticipated that the third dose won't be available to much of the population until January, as the booster shots are recommended 6 months after the second vaccination.
As time increases from somebody's second dose, that they could experience some waning of immunity, where we might then experience, as a community, higher numbers of sort of vaccinated people having COVID-19 and potentially spreading it on.
As the virus spreads further in some portions of the province, Ontario's Chief Medical Officer of Health encourages regional health bodies to strengthen restrictions when they see fit.
We need to, as a province and as a community, find the right balance between measures and allowing ourselves to have, as much as normal activities as we can.
DeMille says there is currently no need to impose further restrictions here in the Thunder Bay District. Corey Nordstrom, TBT News.
Minister Greg Rickford paid visits to a pair of businesses in his Kenora riding this past week to announce $178,000 in Northern Ontario Heritage funding. The Mount Evergreen Ski Hill and a geomatic business were chosen to receive government investments. Adam Riley has the details.
2 years ago, the province, through the Northern Ontario Heritage Fund Corporation, provided money to the Mount Evergreen Ski Club to engage in a study on how to make that site a Four Seasons destination for tourism in Kenora. When the world suddenly shut down following the arrival of COVID-19, it threw some obstacles into the study, as well provided some opportunities.
The consultants that won the bid for that are actually from Winnipeg, so for the first 6-8 months, they actually couldn't come here to do much. So they did what they could online. There was a lot of talk within the news cycles about these pop-up drive-ins going in, so we thought we could do that, and it paired perfectly well with our plans on how can we become a four-season destination.
On Tuesday, Kenora Rainy River MPP Greg Rickford, in his capacity as chair of the NOHFC, stopped in to see the improvements from a $30,000 investment, which included...
They built this drive-in theater right here in Kenora with our support, and the investment also funded a purchase of a video projector and concession equipment, as well as improvements to the parking lot, which is important, and building renovations. Well, you got a big bang for your buck.
Absolutely.
Enabling the club to turn the ski hill into a year-round tourist destination.
Rickford's tour then continued over to the site of the former pulp mill in Kenora, which has been rezoned and redeveloped for commercial use. There he announced $148,000 for Rugged Geomatics to expand their operation.
This funding allows us to consolidate our office and our, call it, warehouse operations. We have a lot of equipment, boats, ATVs, motorhomes, fifth wheels that were stored off site, and now we can consolidate all the equipment. It's much easier to maintain, catalog.
Rickford says he's happy and proud to see the former mill site evolve the way it has and see companies take advantage of the site, adding he is especially excited that Rugged Geomatics chose a unique way to power and heat their building.
Off the grid, drawing solar and natural gas, doing amazing work. They need a lot of space. They run a lot of materials, boats, trailers, different kinds of technologies that they employ. They do underwater surveying as well.
Some of the new equipment made possible through the funding for Rugged Geomatics includes side-scan sonar systems that are comparable in accuracy with equipment used by the U.S. Navy for said underwater surveying. Adam Riley, TBT News.
When we come back, mayors continue to express their concerns over changes to ambulance services that could leave their towns in the lurch. Despite a promise of consultation with communities in the region, it appears the proponents of a plan that would see ambulance service scaled back in Greenstone and along the North Shore have fallen short of that promise, according to multiple municipal leaders in the region. Adam Riley has more.
It began in 2020 when it was announced the ambulance bases in Red Rock, Nipissing, Scriber, and Terrace Bay would be closed and amalgamated into 2 bases near those communities, and Beardmore's would be closed altogether. Immediately, the municipalities in the region rallied and held protests against the proposal, which forced Superior North EMS and the City of Thunder Bay, who controls ambulance services in the Thunder Bay District, to rethink and consult with those communities. Nipissing Mayor Richard Harvey says the plans presented to him so far had assumptions that made no sense.
We look at and are absolutely ridiculous assumptions about the region and about what we're wanting to do, but some of the things that we would be willing to do, that it was simply, well, you didn't talk to us about this. Why would you even put that in there when it's something that, no, of course we don't want to do that.
Harvey is also worried about the potential downloading of costs. Earlier this year, SNEMS began a pilot project that will see Ambutrans, a private entity, take over non-urgent patient transfers. But that pilot is limited to 3 years. That's something neighboring Red Rock Mayor Darkis Robinson is concerned about, especially the impacts and potential to have it all fall back to where they were before the pilot project began.
What's going to happen after 3 years? They don't know. So that money is either going to be those transfers, that's going to be downloaded to the municipalities, the hospital, or the patient themselves. Well, they'll have to pay for that service. And if the hospitals don't want to do it, patients can't pay, and the municipalities aren't going to fund that. You're going to have to use EMS services.
Greenstone Mayor Renaud Beaulieu says his council has passed a motion to have Beardmore Ward Councillor Claudette Trottier work with First Nations in the Beardmore area to keep something in the community. But he admits there will be a cost.
You know, we're talking about a building that's redundant. It's got to go. So we're talking a $2 million investment there. We're talking about the cost of what it is to have the service there. That's not covered by us. It's covered partially by us, but also by the province.
Adam Riley, TBT News.
A report by the Integrity Commissioner for Marathon has found that a home visit by Mayor Rick Dumas violated the municipality's code of conduct. Dumas made the visit to a residence to speak to a homeowner regarding a post on social media where the poster suggested the town's belated lowering of the Ontario flag following the discovery of hundreds of graves at former residential schools was an expression of racism. The report states while speaking with the individual, Dumas raised his voice to the point that he was considered yelling by a neighbor, which violated the section of the code that requires elected officials to behave professionally with constituents. Dumas says he is proud of the work the township has done to improve relations with area First Nations and can get passionate about topics he cares about, but accepts the findings of the report.
I was definitely elevated in my voice. I didn't deny that in any means. And I felt that I was doing the right thing to protect the community's integrity. But at this case, as the commissioner stated, we must hold ourselves to a higher esteem than the constituents we represent. So in that being said, that's where the guilt comes from my behavior through the code of conduct. And I accepted the report, and I thanked the commissioner.
Council had the option of penalizing Dumas, but instead chose to endorse the recommendation in the report that the mayor and all members of council undergo training on ethical behavior and the code of conduct. The report also concluded the allegation that the mayor engaged in a systemically racist way by failing to lower the provincial flag was unsubstantiated. The federal Conservatives have now announced their shadow cabinet, and once again, Kenora MP Eric Melillo has been tapped to critique the Trudeau government. Melillo has served in several shadow cabinet positions since 2019, including his role as critic for the Ministry of Northern Affairs and FedNor. Now he is solely responsible as the critic for FedNor, which itself has a new minister in charge, Patty Hajdu from the neighboring riding in Thunder Bay. Melillo says this is the first time since Trudeau took power in 2015 that someone from Northern Ontario has represented FedNor. He says he's looking forward to working with Hajdu, but notes he will keep her to account.
From the overall point of view, it's it's about ensuring that the programs and the supports coming through FedNor are addressing the needs of Northern Ontario. To put it simply, if you look at the tourism that was hit very hard throughout COVID and some of the regional relief funding that was brought forward through FedNor. A lot of it did still leave out many seasonal businesses. There wasn't, in some cases, enough money in the pot.
Melillo adds he wants to put a focus for the next while on the economic recovery from COVID-19 and addressing the supply of housing in the north. As winter weather begins to settle into the region for the year, the eyes of municipal staff and officials in Nipissing will be on the marina to see if the new breakwall will prevent further damage to its docks. Earlier this year, crews began replacing a breakwall that was removed several years ago to promote fish habitat in the Nipissing Bay area. However, when it was removed, currents coming in off of Lake Superior meeting currents from the Nipissing River made docking difficult for boaters in the summer, contributed to damaging the marina's docks during winter, and is believed to have caused erosion of the banks around the marina area. Mayor Richard Harvey says since the breakwall was installed in July, there's been an improvement in conditions.
Instantly, it was, within a day or so, as soon as the breakwall was put back in place, that was a thing we noticed, is that the current issues were gone. I know coming in a boat, you were able to had that predictability of how your boat would respond instead of those currents that were pushing you around. We have a lot less debris being brought into this area that was previously coming in here. I think we're going to have the shoreline erosion improvements.
But Harvey laments the damage to the dock has been done, and now the town is going to have to look at the big ticket item of replacing the docks, which had replaced a previous set of docks in 2012 that had lasted for over a century. Coming up after the break, Atikokan's mayor wants to see the township focus on road infrastructure going into the final year of the current term of council. The mayor of Atikokan wants to push for more road infrastructure work as the clock winds down on the current term of council. Over the last 3 years, the town has put dollars into upgrading its sewage treatment systems and pumping stations and its arena, pool, and fitness center, to which Dennis Brown says has benefited the health and well-being of the town. But with less than a year left in his term, he wants to shift focus towards improving the roads in Atikokan. Brown acknowledges there is funding available to assist the town, but overall the work won't be cheap.
We have to spend money on upgrading as much as we can of some of the roads. And we do have some money to do. We have money for $5 million from the provincial government, but that's in the federal government, but that's it can take 5 years. But we need to do that, and we need to do probably another $5-10 million because there's all kinds of work that has to be done.
One of the elements of the fall economic statement released by the Ford government includes several amendments to the much-maligned Far North Act, a move that is being welcomed by Kenora Rainy River MPP Greg Rickford, who oversees a pair of ministries that are greatly affected by the act. The act came into effect a decade ago, geared towards protecting land with provincial parks. However, some of that land included Indigenous communities, which effectively limited development in the region. Rickford says while there were many detractors in the act, there were elements of it that he and others liked, such as the land use planning pieces. He says following consultation with Indigenous leaders, these new provisions will enhance relationships.
This is aimed to bring joint decision-making, consensus-based decision-making, if you will, around key legacy infrastructure to support hydro rights of ways, prospective corridors of prosperity and highways, broadband access, and all those different things.
Rickford says the amendments will come into effect as soon as the fall economic statement is ratified and receives royal assent. That does it for this week's edition of Northwest Newsweek. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.